When you're talking about the bottled water industry, you're talking about virtually no testing, and people have just assumed that what we're getting is safe. So we tested over 1,000 bottles of water and found everything from arsenic to leaching from plastic bottles to bacterial contaminants. And really what we learned from this was that you really don't know what you're getting.
Some people have gone to drinking bottled water literally because they are concerned about the water. And the problem is they're unaware of the fact that buying bottled water is not necessarily safe, that you end up being exposed to other chemical compounds.
Testers over the years have come up with all kinds of contaminants in bottled water that we wouldn't have found out about if people hadn't taken upon themselves to run the tests.
In an independent test of bottled water, we sent 7 brands to 2 separate labs. One to Test America, and the other to Dr. Michael Sommer, an environmental chemist. Then, to ensure there'd be no bias, Dr. King, an epidemiologist and toxicologist with Toxicology Inc., analyzed the results.
If you were to look at all the data I brought and you read everything, you'd be horrified. Horrified at what they found from vinyl chloride to butadiene to styrene, benzene. I mean, it's horrifying.
The first group of bottles were tested straight off the shelves.
Test America found in their analysis of the samples toluene. Toluene is a constituent in gasoline and it has been used in paint thinners. It's a neurotoxic agent and is also linked to adverse reproductive outcomes.
The second group was left in the trunk of a car for 1 week.
Dr. Michael Sommer tested some water samples from 5 different bottles and identified styrene in one of the samples. Styrene is a cancer-causing agent and can cause adverse reproductive effects. Dr. Sommer also found 3 different types of phthalates. Phthalates can cause dysfunction, particularly in the fetus, and can cause adverse reproductive outcomes for males and females.
It really concerns me when I see mothers blindly trusting bottled water and handing their children bottles of water, putting their complete trust in a product without so much as questioning, what am I giving my child? Yet we're putting so much faith in this industry that's completely self-regulated and that hasn't been held accountable by anyone. It's frightening.
While single-serve bottles of water are made of PET, 5-gallon water jugs are made of polycarbonate plastic, the primary ingredient being the controversial bisphenol A.
Bisphenol A is the building block molecule that plastic that is hard and clear is made out of.
And from this polycarbonate plastic, bisphenol A leaches, gets into the water.
Bisphenol A may be one of the most potent toxic chemicals known to man.
BPA is found in many products, including sports bottles, baby bottles, and water coolers.
The problem is bisphenol A acts at very low doses as an estrogen.
The recent controversy over BPA started when members of the scientific community questioned the methodology of earlier studies.
All regulatory agencies around the world are based on a concept from the 16th century. That is, the dose makes the poison. More is worse. That is not true for any hormone. We tested a dose 25,000 times lower than what anybody had ever tested, and we found that it profoundly damaged every single part of the male developing mouse reproductive system.
After a decade of research on low-dose exposure to BPA, Dr. Frederick Wamsal's findings captured the media's attention. His work, corroborated by other independent scientists, led the Senate to investigate the FDA.
The media has reported that the federal government's reluctance to regulate these chemicals is based on the reliance of biased studies from the chemical industry itself. Now, I have to tell you, if that's true, doesn't that cast amazing doubt on the ability of the regulatory system to actually protect the public?
Senator, at FDA, all of our products that we approve are based on data that are prepared and conducted in studies by that particular manufacturer.
All you do is just rely on what a study that comes from the industry itself? It's a disgrace.
They didn't get it right with Vioxx. They're not getting it right with bisphenol A. And there's going to be hell to pay over this.
Senator, we have looked at all the studies in the literature, and there are hundreds.
The Food and Drug Administration did not look at all the evidence. They looked at 2 studies produced by the chemical industry and made their decision on that basis.
Have you asked for studies from independent sources?
We don't normally ask for independence.
Then you don't protect the American people.
The National Institutes of Health reviewed 700 peer-reviewed published studies on bisphenol A. 38 internationally recognized scientists said, we are extremely concerned about the impact of this on human health.
It happens over and over again that regulatory agencies are captured by the industries they regulate. And certainly the Food and Drug Administration, and especially the food branch, is one that has really been in the food industry and the packaging industry's pocket for many years.
We've got to start to do what we're supposed to do, not what the industry always asks us to do. You have any response? None. Think everything's okay?
There is virtually no major human health trend over the past 30 years that hasn't increased, such as childhood diabetes, that is not related to exposure to this chemical. We find it relating to obesity, breast cancer, to prostate cancer, diabetes, brain disorders such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, liver disease, ovarian disease, disease of the uterus, low sperm count in men. We're talking about $7 billion a year industry. They will spend any amount of that $7 billion necessary in advertising to the American public, trying to convince them this chemical is completely safe.
The scientists who work for product defense companies will never produce a study, or certainly will never publish a study, that finds a result that the sponsors don't like. Because their job, their whole economic model is based on working for the companies to protect their products.
Walmart has taken the initiative to remove this type of packaging from their shelves. They've been called more stringent than the FDA. How do you respond to that?
I appreciate that you want information about BPA, and I'm sure FDA would be happy to respond, but I'm not the appropriate person to answer those questions.
My concern is that the FDA doesn't want us to ask about BPA because of the current investigation. Can you talk about it now?
No. If I had known you were going to talk about that, probably wouldn't have given you the interview.
Bisphenol A is so frightening to the regulatory community because of the magnitude of the error they made. And bisphenol A is the poster child chemical that is going to dismantle the entire regulatory process and demand a reanalysis of all chemicals.